Number 10. Kylie Jenner. The US business magazine estimated Jenner's net worth at $1 billion and claimed she was the world's youngest self-made billionaire at the age of 21 in March 2019. Forbes later released a statement accusing the makeup mogul of forging tax documents so she would appear to be a billionaire, and claimed she fabricated revenue figures for her cosmetics business Kylie Cosmetics. Jenner seemed taken aback by the claims and tweeted that the magazine had published, quote, inaccurate statements and unproven assumptions, and denied forging any documents. The magazine adds that a more realistic accounting of her personal fortune puts it at just under $900 million, which is still a lot of money, but it's not a billion. Number 9. Sean Kingston. The Jamaican-American singer achieved fame as soon as he stepped into the limelight when he released the single Beautiful Girls. Since then, it's fair to assume people haven't heard a whole lot about Sean, who's still trying to recreate that success. Well, back then, being one of the biggest stars around, you'd think it would be easy for him to try and impress beautiful girls. You'd think he'd have women falling at his feet due to his superstar status. Perhaps he did, but Sean still played fast and loose with the truth and still felt he needed to add to his image. He was found out lying to a date when he revealed to the paparazzi that he had owned a sports car given to him by Justin Bieber. They later discovered after some digging that Bieber had only lent him the wheels for a matter of days. Probably to impress his date, but we're not sure. Number 8. Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker was once one of Hollywood's top men. Once upon a time, he was ranking it in. At the height of his powers, he was earning $25 million for films like Rush Hour 3, despite that film being a major flop. His comedic timing and general funny man persona meant he was loved by one and all. The once bankable star, despite still living the high life, soon went broke. He blames this on a number of things. Firstly, he had tax problems and had to shell out millions to the taxman. But secondly, he became a born-again Christian. This meant that he became very choosy with the roles that were offered to him. Almost all were too inappropriate for him and didn't sit well with him on his mission of wanting to be closer to God. But many would say he's been using this as an excuse and that he's been lying about this aspect of his lifestyle. He said he was going to keep his comedy clean, but anyone who's seen his work recently would know that that's not the case. Number 7. Britney Spears. Britney Spears was a superstar singer who ruled the pop world during the late 90s and early 2000s. And today she's still around doing her thing, but has gone through plenty of issues since her initial rise to fame. And it's safe to say that she's no longer the pop princess she once was. There are plenty of people who say that everything about Britney Spears is fake. From her look to her voice, music, lifestyle, and just overall personality, everything about Britney is an illusion for the media. After her golden period, she went on a hiatus, and that's when she was dealing with plenty of things. When Sam Lutfi was her manager, she was still acting like a pop princess, but was seriously hemorrhaging money. She was hardly earning during this time, but was spending what cash she had on anything and everything. Cars, homes, shopping, you name it, she splurged on it. Britney was broke, yet was spending a whopping $700,000 a month. She was caught when it was discovered her dad had to step in and help her get a grip. Number 6. Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton has been caught faking an aspect of her persona. Well, she was caught because she chose to come out with it herself and reveal everything. We probably all know that Paris lives a life of luxury. She's an heiress to a fortune and is basically famous for being famous and flaunting her cash. Kinda like the Kardashians. But there's an aspect of her lifestyle that she has faked. Remember when Paris Hilton first did reality TV along with her best buddy Nicole Richie? They were a part of The Simple Life in the early 2000s. And it's fairly self-explanatory from the title, it's about the two getting to grips with the normal life, so-called simple life. Nicole was the troublemaker and Paris portrayed the young, dumb, ditzy blonde. Apparently, it was all staged. Paris was asked to portray that character and due to the success of the show, went along with it for the next 5 years. Number 5. 50 Cent. If you think about some of the wealthiest rappers in the world, you'd have to assume that 50 Cent would feature on that list. He's had a string of successful hit singles, was a movie star, boxing promoter, and can add businessman to that list too. But some of his business decisions and financial planning have gone south, leaving 50 Cent in debt. At one point he was broke and filed for bankruptcy. It was then that we realized that the whole image he was portraying and the lifestyle he claimed to be leading at the time was fake. He also had other money issues too, and was ordered to pay back some of his debts because it was thought, judging by his lifestyle, that he could afford to do so. That's when he pulled back the curtain and revealed his lifestyle was an illusion. His gold chains were recycled, cars were rentals, and he lied about placing $1 million bets on boxing fights, and the list just goes on and on and on. Number 4. Sean Combs. This guy is probably the only other person person who can rival Jay-Z. When it comes to the money side of things, Sean Combs has earned his fortune as a rapper, singer, songwriter, actor, record producer, and entrepreneur. He's made some savvy decisions and it's led to him acquiring a vast sum of wealth. It seems like rappers just love lying about private jets they supposedly own. Combs can certainly afford his own private jet, and does have one now, one that's actually his. But even he, once upon a time, lied about owning a private jet. He once said that he owned one, but didn't use it regularly because of the sky-high prices of fuel. I mean, accurate, but it wasn't true. At the time he said that, of course people began doing some digging. And it wasn't long before it was discovered that he'd rented a jet by the hour and didn't actually own one. Number 3. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan has been through a lot, and she's still relatively young. But as she rose through the ranks and got older, she struggled to deal with the fame, fortune, and everything that being a celebrity entails. Her downward spiral was dramatic, and she's still struggling to find her feet again on the Hollywood scene. Although it was evident she was going through numerous problems, Lindsay tried to hide it as best she could, although she didn't do a very good job at it. She was broke and filed for bankruptcy, yet she was still living in her plush accommodation, dining in seriously fancy restaurants, etc. She has also been caught lying about other aspects of her life, many think just to keep herself relevant in the eyes of the media. Wild stories about her crop up time and time again, and sources close to Lindsay have revealed they're all lies. Number 2. Khloe Khan. Nowadays, you really can become a celebrity for doing anything, so as long as your face gets picked up, you get a little bit of popularity, you can build upon that. That's exactly what Khloe Khan did. She may not be too familiar to those outside of the UK, but on British shores, she's created quite a name for herself. Her rise to fame began when she unsuccessfully auditioned for the show The X Factor. Now, most people would just disappear after achieving their 5 minutes of fame, but not Khloe. She gained a bit of popularity and this just grew. She then achieved fame after dating John Gray, and subsequently becoming the face of the chain of clubs. Khloe has also achieved webcam success and has launched a premium social club fans-only site. She's been dubbed the Millionaire Princess, but her luxurious lifestyle is all an illusion. For example, she claims she owns a mansion. It's been discovered, however, that the mansion consists of apartments, and she only rents out one of them. She's told people the fancy car she owns was bought with her hard-earned cash. Then she told other people it was a freebie for promotion purposes. Now coming in at number 1, Justin Bieber. If anyone in the singing profession could afford to buy a private jet, it'd be Justin Bieber. The guy's been continuously racking it in from a relatively young age, and he's one of the highest paid singers around. He's also someone who loves to splash on the cash. What he spent with his money on is a subject that often warrants plenty of attention from the media. He spent his cash on the usual things such as parties, cars, and houses, and I suppose buying a private jet is usual when it comes to a superstar singers in his line of work. Or he wanted everybody to think so anyway. Posting a picture one Christmas casually announcing he bought himself a little Christmas present in the shape of a private jet. But as soon as he posted that photo, TMZ began doing their homework. They discovered that the jet was basically a rental, and it wasn't long before people began getting on his back. Number 10. Ike Batista. In 2012, Batista was worth an estimated $30 billion, making him the 7th richest man in the world. But when Batista's oil company failed to meet demands and Brazil's economy slid into a decline, the billionaire filed for bankruptcy in 2013, after authorities began investigating why Brazil's top companies had declined so quickly. They charged Batista with money laundering and corruption in January 2017. Then in July 2018, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison for bribing former Rio de Janeiro governor Sergio Cabral. Number 9. The Koch Brothers. David and Charles, the brothers still with Koch Industries, are among the world's biggest polluters. Bill Koch, who split off from the family company, is a world-class weirdo who devotes himself to things like building a faux western town solely for his amusement and buying a $2 million photo of Billy the Kid. Though not as active in bankrolling GOP polls as his brothers, Bill was a big supporter of fellow 1% jerk Mitt Romney and has found time to fight against America's first offshore wind farm in Massachusetts. As for David and Charles, they have won a permanent spot in the Public Menace Hall of Fame, kicking their fellow human beings in the face with everything from funding climate change denial to strangling democracy. They have striven to reshape America into a Tea Party nightmare and have plenty of money to continue their mission. Number 8. Peter Peterson. Private equity mogul Pete Peterson, who founded the Blackstone Group with Steven Schwartzman, has a very straightforward agenda. He wants to kill Social Security and Medicare, the programs that keep millions of Americans out of poverty. His strategy is to channel gargantuan amounts of money into stoking nonsensical deficit hysteria. His focus on austerity policies, which have proved disastrous around the world, particularly in places like the UK, makes him an economic quack, but one who has found willing ears among fools and villains. villains. Peterson has pushed his messaging into popular culture. He has held high-profile summits, and he has enlisted hordes of wealthy politicians, like Alan Simpson. He is a driving force behind the Fix the Debt campaign, a consortium of corporate bosses and rich individuals who have attempted to bring deficit scaremongering to DC in order to achieve cuts to vital programs and further strip hardworking Americans of their dignity. Number 7. Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch, the Australian media tycoon, has dedicated himself to coercing the public through the misinformation, intolerance, and contempt of ordinary people promoted through his News Corp. Politicians woo him for his cash and the vast influence of his newspapers, magazines, and TV networks, creating a foul nexus of influence that is corrosive to democracy. Be it union busting, race baiting, or monopolistic business practices, Murdoch has been there, done that. He's found himself embroiled in a hacking scandal in which employees of his newspaper were caught doing just about anything, including bribing police and hacking into the phone of an executed schoolgirl to get a story. Murdoch had previously tweeted what he considered a joke about an obese woman who fell through a New York sidewalk, asking if she got too fat from food stamps and welfare. Number 6. Stephen Schwartzman. The Blackstone Group's co-founder Stephen Schwartzman, described as private equity's designated villain in The New Yorker, is fond of throwing lavish parties for himself, including an infamous $3 million birthday feat in June 2007 at New York City's Park Avenue Armory. The party, which went down in history as a show-stopping chant to bad taste, featured a marching band of a 50-foot silkscreen recreation of Schwartzman-owned $40 billion apartment. Revelers included Bill Clinton and Cardinal Edward Egan, now considered a dark horse for the Pope. A couple of months later, the economy tanked thanks in part to the mismanagement and excess debt of the unregulated private equity firms that have served to weaken the real economy. Schwartzman captured headlines by comparing raising taxes on private equity fat cats like himself to Adolf's invasion of Poland. He's reportedly outraged that persons like himself have been the subject of contempt since the financial crisis. Number 5. Gina Rinne. If there is a place for those who hate working people, Australian mining mogul Gina Rinne occupies the innermost circle. The richest woman in the Asia-Pacific region likes to share her obscene philosophy of wealth, and had once made a case for $2 a day pay. She also instructed poor people to stop being jealous of the rich and to focus on working harder, and drinking and smoking less. She blamed Australia's economic problems on a socialist, anti-business agenda. But of course, Rinne, who inherited a $30 billion fortune, has never had a real job. Number 4. True Cathy. While Chick-fil-A is perhaps best known for its crispy chicken sandwiches, the company is also known for its controversy surrounding LGBTQ+ rights. Chick-fil-A and its president Dan Cathy, whose current net worth is $5.2 billion, were scandalized after the company revealed its support for Christian organizations such as Fellowship of Christian Athletes, the Salvation Army, and the Paul Anderson Youth Home, which have all held anti-gay beliefs over the years. In 2012, Cathy gave an interview to the Baptist Press in which he said he believed in the, quote, biblical definition of the family unit. That is, that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. Backlash ensued, and while Cathy claimed it was his own personal religious belief and that the company did not have any anti-gay agenda, activists went as far as to boycott the chain entirely. The chain has since stopped donating to these organizations, choosing instead to donate to education, homeless, and hunger. Number 3. The Walton Family. The Walton family is the richest in the US and heirs to the retail juggernaut Walmart. They collectively claim 0.14% of the country's entire wealth. Or to put it another way, they are worth as much as the bottom 41% of all Americans combined. Their legacy is a grotesque business model that depends on pushing down wages and sinking living standards for millions of Americans. Rob is the chairman of the board of directors of the company that pays its full-time hourly employees an average of $12.50 and has a policy of keeping them part-time so they don't even earn that. The Waltons are big-time funders of conservative causes, with special emphasis on undermining public education. Jim Walton, who serves as a chairman for the Walton-owned Arvest Bank, is particularly active in injecting his family's ill-gotten gains into politics. Number 2. Leon Black. In October 2020, a New York Times report revealed that Black, the billionaire founder of private equity and investing firm Apollo Management, paid disgraced financier Jeffrey about $50 million for personal financial advice between 2012 and 2017. The time period is notable. It means Black engaged in Jeffrey's services long after he was convicted in 2008 of an underage intimacy charge in Florida, in a plea deal worked out between him and U.S. attorneys that enabled Jeff to serve that many believe was a light prison sentence in a county jail. jail. Black quickly expressed regret for his association with Jeffrey since his 2019 arrest, said that Jeffrey never did business with Apollo, and claimed he was unaware of Jeff's alleged intimacy ring of underage girls. Number 1. Jacqueline Mars. Jacqueline Mars, the heiress to the Mars candy fortune and company co-owner, was involved in a 2013 car accident that took the life of a woman and an unborn child. The Washington Post reported that, according to authorities, Mars had told a witness at the scene of the accident that she had fallen asleep while driving. The victims in the accident were identified as 86-year-old grandmother named Irene, who was sitting in the back seat, and the unborn child of Ashley Aker Blakesley, the driver of the Chrysler minivan struck by Mars' Porsche SUV. 5 other passengers were later treated at the hospital. At the time, Mars was the second richest woman in the US with a net worth of $20.5 billion. Her net worth currently sits at $30.2 billion. She pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor reckless driving charge, resulting in 6 months suspension of her driver's license and a $2,500 fine. The Aker family said they never wished for Mars to spend time behind bars for the accident. "We have only forgiveness in our hearts for her," Sharon Aker, Ashley's mother, had said in a court statement. "My husband and I would like to say thank you to Miss Mars for her kindness thus far and hope in time that she too will find peace." Number 10. Bridge alignment gone wrong. When you come across a fail like this, it really makes you wonder if somebody was out there playing an elaborate joke or something. There's no way that anyone could possibly mess up a project that important, right? It's less than likely that the guy responsible for this one kept his job. On the plus side, it looks like one lane on each side lines up with the other. At least all they need now is a couple of ramps to send traffic flying over the gap to and from work on their daily commute. Or maybe a catapult to send people in cars to the other side. But the reality of that actually working is probably pretty low. I mean, this guy made one of his own, and as cool as it is, it probably won't work with cars. So this bridge was a big flop and likely cost thousands of dollars to fix. Modern problems require modern solutions. Number 9. French train company orders trains that are too fat for platforms. The French company SNCF flubbed the purchase of 2,000 trains in 2014. The problem? Well, many of their platforms were too narrow to fit the new trains. The mistake cost around 50 million euros, a steep cost to incur on top of the 15 billion euros they had just paid for the trains. The error occurred when the operator neglected to factor in measurements of train platforms that had been built more than 50 years ago. The process of expanding the 1,300 platforms to accommodate their corresponding trains took 2 years, in a process that was equally expensive and time-consuming as it was embarrassing. But I mean, in all fairness, I went out and bought a couch without measuring my apartment, and now it's too big. So I guess the operator and I have something in common. But also, now I've learned my lesson, like now I measure things. But also, if I was a train operator, I would have definitely measured. Number 8. Blockbuster could have bought Netflix in 2000. Before video streaming services became all the rage, you used to have to go to these places called video stores where you'd rent movies. If you kept it past the due date, you'd have to pay a late fee. Blockbuster was the biggest of these video store chains, and it was the best. I mean, the store shut down and it sucked. Everyone loved the place. But then Netflix was a successful newcomer with an interesting business model. In 2000, Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, met with John Antioco, the CEO of Blockbuster, to propose a partnership. Netflix would run Blockbuster's online brand, and Blockbuster would promote Netflix in stores. John and his team laughed Hastings out of their office. 10 years later, Blockbuster went bankrupt, and now Netflix is currently worth $15.8 billion. Talk about bad luck. Number 7. Publishers pass on Harry Potter. Undoubtedly, you've heard the story, not Harry Potter's story, the one about the woman who wrote the books. JK had humble beginnings. She conceived the idea of Harry Potter in 1990 while sitting on a delayed train from Manchester to London King's Cross. Over the next 5 years, she began to map out all 7 books of the series. She wrote mostly in longhand and gradually built up a mass of notes, many of which were scribbled on odd scraps of paper. Taking her notes with her, she moved to northern Portugal to teach English as a foreign language. Married in 1992 and had a daughter, Jessica, in 1993. When the marriage ended later that year, she returned to the UK to live in Edinburgh with Jessica and a suitcase containing the first 3 chapters of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. After she finished writing, the books catapulted her to success. For inspiration, JK shared a couple of her rejection letters with her Twitter followers. In response to Robert E. Galbraith, one publisher says, "I regret that we've reluctantly come to the conclusion that we could not publish Harry Potter with commercial success." The book was then first published by Bloomsbury Children's Book in June 1997. Now book sales alone of the Harry Potter series have grossed to well over an estimated $7.7 billion. Number 6. Robert Wayne sells his Apple stock for $800. Everyone knows that hindsight is 20/20, but still this had to sting. Steve Jobs is a household name, and most moderately tech-inclined people are familiar with Steve Wozniak, but many are unfamiliar with Apple's third founder, Ronald Wayne. Wayne drew Apple's iconic logo and served as an intermediary between the two innovative Steves. Jobs' strong personality clashed with Wayne, eventually prompting him to sell his 10% stake in the company for $800 in 1976.
fix, which today is around $4,000, a decision that prevented him from becoming a multi-billionaire. Apple then became worth well over $1 trillion. Despite missing out on enormous earnings, Wayne said he had no regrets in leaving the company. But I mean, I'm sure deep down there's gotta be some kind of regret. I mean, imagine you had this piece of jewelry that it was only worth $20, so you sold it to buy a pizza or whatever, and then years later you found out it is now worth over $1 million. Gotta feel pretty bad. Number 5. Millennium, the wobbly bridge in the Thames. On June 10th, 2000, construction was completed on an £18.2 million bridge connecting both sides of the River Thames. The bridge was then closed 3 days later after a disturbing incident while the bridge was crowded with foot traffic. The bridge was swaying very dangerously. During the weekend it opened, approximately 160,000 people crossed the pedestrian bridge and were understandably alarmed by the rapid movement of the fixture. The cause of the problem was the bridge's popularity. Too many people stepping in unison along the path. The bridge closed immediately following the concerns, but more money had to be raised to correct the problem. It would then be 2 years before the bridge would open again. Number 4. Star Wars merchandise. George Lucas is a rich man, but it's quite possible he could have been a lot richer. The film studio was very unwilling to fork over the necessary cash to allow the green filmmaker to film a certain science fiction story involving robots, spaceships, and light-up swords. So Lucas decided to sweeten the deal a little. He signed over the merchandising rights for all Star Wars films to 20th Century Fox. That means that Lucas doesn't see a dime from every toy droid, stormtrooper, or lightsaber sold. And I don't think I have to tell you how much money Star Wars merchandise makes for you to understand how much that has to hurt. But here's a little glimpse. In 1978, Star Wars action figures alone exceeded $100 million in sales. By now, it's well into the billions. Number 3. Excite could have bought Google during its early stages. If you remember the early days of the internet, you might remember Excite. In 1999, it was the second most popular search engine. Yahoo was in fact number 1. Google, then called Backrub, was a promising new competitor in the search engine market. But hey, little side note, imagine an alternate reality where the name wasn't changed and people referred to an internet search as a backrub. Kinda weird. Anyway, moving on. Excite was interested in buying the company for $750,000, but passed when Google insisted that its technology replace Excite's. Maddeningly, one of the main reasons cited for Excite passing on Google's technology was because they thought it worked too well. Users would find the information they wanted and move on too quickly, and Excite would lose precious revenue. Excite sold to Yahoo in 2004, and estimates valued Google at $167 billion. Number 2. Man throws away 7,500 bitcoins in 2009. In 2009, few saw the way cryptocurrency would take off in the coming years. Unfortunately for James Howell, he was not one of the few blessed with the foresight. Shortly after acquiring 7,500 bitcoins, when they were worth very little, Mr. Howell spilled coffee on his computer. He salvaged and sold most of the parts and got all the information he thought he'd need off the hard drive. The hard drive sat in his drawer for years before he threw it away for a move. When he realized his mistake and after seeing the way Bitcoin had taken off, he began searching for the lost hard drive in the city dump. To make matters worse, the Newport City Council forbid him from continuing the search due to concerns about the environmental impact of disturbing potentially hazardous waste. Bitcoin peaked when it hit over $19,000 in December 2017, and this means that Howell essentially threw away $148 million. Now call it insanely bad luck or stupidity, but that's just unfortunate nonetheless. Now coming in at number 1, a walkie-talkie building is so reflective it melts car parts. You might have heard about a building so ugly that it hurts your eyes, but you've probably never considered a building that can melt a car. The funny-looking building on 20 French Church Street had to shell out some extra funds for some protection after complaints that it had melted parts of a man's Jaguar that was parked across the street. The glare from the 37th-floor skyscraper at 20 French Church Street melted parked vehicles and damaged shops in the City of London. Developer Land Security said it has received planning permission to install a sunshade. In its financial results for 2013, the developer said a solar glare issue drew attention to the building for the wrong reasons. The scorching glare and heat also damaged parked vehicles, including a Jaguar, melting its wing mirror, panels, and Jaguar badge. Martin Lindsay was returning to his vehicle one day when he noticed a photographer snapping pictures of his car. His rearview mirror and part of the body had rippled under the intense heat generated by the reflection of the side of the building. Developers paid the £946 fee to Mr. Lindsay and had built a temporary sunscreen to mitigate sun damage to the surrounding area until a permanent solution was found. I mean, I don't own a super luxury car, but if I was the owner of that car, I would be so mad. But that is everything. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.